Hello and welcome to Love Anything Art. Today I have a cane idea for you, and then I will show you 4 ideas from that cane. I chose the colors that I thought were pretty together. I just looked up some color combinations online, and I actually had the clay colors to kind of match those, so that's how I came up with this color combination. You can use any colors that you want. I have rolled out each of my colors into long, thin snakes. I'm going to use a piece of scratch paper that's been used in the past. Gotta reuse when we can. I'm going to separate those out. Make sure they're nice and rolled out. And I'm going to be using some black paint. You could use another color if you wanted, like gold or white, depending on what color clay you use. You'll go ahead and paint each of those snakes of clay. And you'll just roll them over and do the other side once they've dried until you get the entire thing covered. Then I'm going to cut each one of those in half. And with each of those, I will twist them together. I'm only going to twist them about halfway down the strand because the second half of the strand I'm going to use for twisting together various colors, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Alright, I have each of those twisted together, and then I will just cut away all of the excess. And with each of those, I'm going to cut them down into even length pieces. I will start with what I want for my center, which is the pink. So I'm going to cut off a few of those. And then I'm going to gently press them together. Try to get them to stick together as best I can. The paint will kind of hinder the ability to get it to stick, but with enough rolling and pressure, you will get it to stick together. You could also use a little bacon bond if that's not working. I've rolled out a sheet of really thin black clay. You can use whatever color you want in between your rolled out pieces. You just want to make one thin layer around that center piece. While I'm doing that, I just want to welcome everybody to my channel. I hope you take a moment today to hit that subscribe button. I would appreciate it. I do have over 200 videos for you to watch and enjoy. And I've done all kinds of different things, from fun little animal creatures and food products to jewelry, which is what I've kind of gotten more into. Kind of off the wall, weird random pattern jewelry. And once I have that center part done, I'm going to take another strand of my clay. I believe this one is the gold. And I will cut that down into even length pieces, going all the way around. Once that's covered, I will again put a thin layer of the rolled out black clay around that. Now for the extra halves, I'm going to take different colors and roll them together. You can do pink and gold, blue and gold, pink and blue, just as many random color combinations as you can. And that will be the very outer layer. I just wanted that one to be kind of fun and different than the center pieces. Once you have that all put together, you'll want to make it so that it is longer. And this is mine. I did make my cane pretty thin, but you can make yours as wide as you want yours. So for the first idea, I am going to make a star pendant out of this. Just want to take some of your rolled out clay and cut it into even length pieces. You'll have 6 of them. One will be for the center. You'll leave that one round. And for the outer 5, you'll just want to pinch down one side to make it into a teardrop shape. Just kind of working your way and doing it very slowly so that you kind of don't distort your shapes inside, so it's not one big mushy pile. No one likes mushy clay. All right, I have mine all done. Then I will just arrange them around my centerpiece. And this is going to be a very small cane. Basically, I'm going to put it together and get all the pieces stuck together. And then I'm going to cut it in half. And then I will have enough for my bracelet and my necklace. And I have baked mine. This thinner one will be for my bracelet and this thicker one will be for my necklace. For my bracelet, I'm just going to use some wire. You can use any kind of wire you want. This is the one that I'm specifically using, and I will leave links below for you. And basically, I'll kind of do the same for each of these. So I'll show you how I made the bracelet, and then you can pretty much put together how I do the necklace. You can put your holes in before you bake, but I'm putting mine in after. I do have a drill. So I'm just going to drill a hole on each side so that it is directly across from each other. And I do want to put it down into the clay straight and not at an angle so that it sits straight across my wrist. And I've created an eye hook that I will glue in to each of those sides. And then I'm just getting all my pieces out to assemble my bracelet. You'll need quite a few different pieces to put it together. This is just a really convenient set that I bought online, and it has all of these different colors and each of the pieces you'll need for it. So you have a clamshell, you have your little clasp, and then you have all of your jump rings. And you have those for each of the colors. So that's kind of cool and convenient. And I don't think it was a whole lot. I think it was like $12 for that. I'll leave a link below for you. But you'll want to put on your clamshell cover. And then your little bead inside of there. Your little crimp bead. Crimp that into place and you'll cover that up. Then you'll need to place on a jump ring on the end. And you can connect that to your bracelet. At this point, you do want to measure to make sure it sits on your wrist where you want it to, and then cut away any excess. And you will do the same to that end as you did to the other end, and then again to the other side of the bracelet. And this is mine, and I really, really adore this pattern from the cane. I just thought it was really, really cool. I love the colors together too. And then this is the necklace. I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. I'm going to drill a hole all the way through one of the star points, and I will put my wire through there so that it can sit on my neck. And when you're drilling your hole through, you can go almost all the way through to the other side to where you kind of see the tip coming out, and then flip it over and start drilling the other way. And this will hopefully help prevent any breakage in the clay. Sometimes the side that you're coming out will break off a little bit. So I find if you just take it out and then come back through the other way, it leads to less breakage. And then you will want to make sure that the wire that you've chosen does fit through your hole, because you'll need to make the hole bigger if it does not. And of course, you are free to resin your piece if you want. It would look good resined too, it would bring out a lot of those colors, but I kind of wanted to leave it more of a matte finish for my pieces today. Idea number 2 is the donut pendant. You'll use the same cane that we made earlier, and you'll want to cut off even length pieces. I prefer to cut mine in a sawing motion instead of just straight down. I tend to have less distortion when I do it in the sawing motion. I'm going to cut off just enough to where I have enough to fit in my little donut cutter here, and nothing more than that really. Basically, you want to put your pieces together, lightly press it together with your fingers, and then give it a light burnishing to get everything stuck together. And this way you won't get any distortion by just rolling it out. It'll keep that nice round shape. Be sure to flip it over and do the other side. You do want your piece to be really thin, not thin where it's going to break, but thin enough to where it's going to be able to be bendable. So I'm just going to take a moment and stretch mine out. If you do have any pieces that are kind of wonky, just lightly shave it off. I'm using the lightest of pressures going across multiple times, you'll see there, without gathering anything, because I don't want to gouge my clay, and the clay is already thin. And you can always go back over and burnish out any flaws that you make. For our piece, we're going to use the sharp side of the cutter, and you'll want the pretty side to be facing down into the cutter, with the sharp side of the cutter facing up. And you'll just use your finger and start pressing it down into your circle cutter. Not using a terrible amount of force, you don't want to poke your finger through it. You kind of want to just give it its time to be able to go slowly down in there and bend its shape. You can always flip it over too and get all the pieces to kind of flip back the other way so that it kind of stays more in the center where it's supposed to and doesn't kind of pull or drag the clay down into the cutter. But just take your time with this step and very lightly press, especially around the sides. Make sure you get those really good. That way you get that really nice domed shape. Make sure everything is smooth. This will be the inside, so it doesn't matter. You're trying to make sure that the other side is smooth. And you'll see there, it's got a very beautiful dome shape. I love the way it looks already. And I've rolled out some of this gray clay. You can use whatever color complements your colors that you've chosen. This will just be the backing of the piece, so it's not terribly important. Just center it on there and go ahead and cut that away. And one of my sides of my circle cutter does have a little dip in it, so it always leaves a notch. So if I turn it and turn it and turn it, it tends to get rid of that notch that puts on the side there, because my cutter isn't seamless. So keep your scraps, of course. We have scrap clay projects in the future, I am sure. I just love the way it looks. It looks really, really, really pretty. Yes, I'm proud. Look at boop, 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 boop. Air in there. Alright, and then gently peel it off of your workstation. I'm just gonna clean up my area a little bit here so I don't get any little pieces on my clay. And then just run your finger along that side and the bottom, and you can get rid of any little pieces, and this will help rub it away and make it nice and smooth. You could do this after you bake it too, but I don't want to polish or anything, so I want it just to have that nice matted finish that clay has when it comes out of the oven. You'll need a smaller circle cutter. Just pick out one that's relatively small in comparison to the larger one, and then decide where you want to place it inside of your circle, whether it's at the top, the bottom, the middle, the side, whatever you want to do. And I do find it easier to cut out my centerpiece if I put the larger circle back out on the outside. And then you can give it a quick little spin around to make sure it looks like it's pretty much right there in the center. Doesn't have to be perfect, but as close as you can get it. And then very gently press your cutter down into the center. And again, I'll do the same thing I did with the outside, because this one does have that seam on the cutter. So if I twirl it, I can get rid of that seam. Just taking my time, making sure I go all the way around. And then of course, you can pop out that little piece in the center and use it for whatever you want. Part of this necklace, or maybe an earring, or whatever you want. Just make sure everything's smooth. Once you have it how you want it, you can also use your finger to kind of smooth it out in the center too. Make sure it's nice and smooth. And then before baking it, I would just recommend putting a tiny little hole on the side that you are going to put your hanging piece on. So this is the piece that I'm going to be using, my little bail. So it's going to be covered up and no one's going to be able to see it. And then this was the bail I was showing you just a minute ago. It's kind of got funky little patterns all over it, and I love it. And it came in this little set. I'll leave links below for you. But it came with a whole bunch of different ones. I think they were made for earrings because it had 2 of each. But really, I'm going to use it for my necklaces too. Because why not? And I just have a very simple cord I'm going to be using. It's got a couple different strands on it. Then I just put my little bail clip on there. And I would recommend just opening it up just to make sure that it's going to fit on your piece. And of course, you could have done this before you baked it if you wanted to, but I have my drill, so it's just easier to do it afterwards. I do need to open mine up just a little bit more. I'm just kind of figuring out where I want to set it inside of the donut hole and making sure that it's going to fit on there nicely. Now that I kind of know where I need to cut or drill my hole, you don't want to go super close to the edge because there is a possibility that it might break if you have it too thin towards the edge. So kind of going into the piece just a little bit. It's not going to be noticeable after you put the finding or the bail on there. You'll see there, I cut my tiny little hole. You do want to make sure that your holes are the same size. You'll see mine is a little bit bigger for my jewelry finding, and I'll just need to drill a slightly larger hole. which is good anyway because you kind of want to go from a smaller hole to a larger hole. You don't want to just take the actual large size you need and drill it down into the piece because it will cause your piece to break or crack. So just go from small to larger. And since my hole is not too much smaller than the other piece, I can go ahead and just use the actual size I need now. And I'll leave a link for this drill in the description box below. It's actually a really nice drill, and I think it was like 10 or 11 bucks. Prices could have changed a little bit in the last 2 years, but and then you'll just need to attach it, just starting from the back so I can kind of lay it down, and then using both of my pliers and pushing it together. You don't want it to be too tight, you want it to be able to move around and not too loose where it falls out. So just kind of working it in there. And I do love the way this looks. I love the pattern. Kind of want to make it again and just make a bunch of things. I hope you liked this one. Idea number 3 is the starfish. I'm going to use the scraps and put the cane piece onto the side. I think I might actually use the cane ends maybe in a project in the future. You'll just need a little piece, and you'll roll it out into kind of a little worm or snake shape. You want it to be rather thin, and I've made a couple of those. Place them into the star shape. I'm going to use my fingers to press it all together, keeping it in the little round shape. Just making sure all the pieces are stuck together. And then I'm going to just use a wooden dowel and smooth everything out, make sure everything is joined together. This will be the base for the starfish. And I'm going to cut off a bunch of thin pieces of my cane. Now, it can be a little difficult to cut off really thin pieces, but I'll kind of walk you through it here. And you do need them to be pretty thin. You want to do it in the sawing motion, and you'll want to press kind of back into the cane and roll down with a little bit of pressure. If you don't push back into the cane, it will come away kind of wonky and not in a whole piece. And you could actually freeze this in the freezer and work with it that way. It'll be a lot easier, and you could probably make a solid slice through instead of doing the sawing motion. Or if you wanted to practice a little bit, you could roll out just a regular piece of whatever clay straight out of the package, roll it out, and kind of practice with that, making thinner pieces. If you feel like you can't make them very thin, you can make them thicker. Your starfish is just going to be a little bit bigger and more plump than mine will be. Or you can cut off a thicker piece, and I'll show you with some scrap that I had cut off earlier. I'll just get a piece of that. And this is just a thicker piece. It doesn't look that great because it was just a random piece that I cut off. But just kind of smush it between your fingers a little bit. Not completely distorting it, but just kind of making it flatter. You'll want to keep it the same width as best you can. If for some reason it gets too wide, which might happen if you're smushing it between your fingers, you can just take a small circle cutter and cut it down to the size that you need. It will take off a little bit on the outside, but it will give you a thinner slice. You'll see here it's pretty close to the small piece that I cut off. So there's a whole bunch of options if you can't shave off small pieces. Once I have all mine cut, I'm just laying them out on the Starfish just to make sure it's going to cover all of the spaces. And I'm going to start with the center one first, just stretching it out just a little bit, just to make it a little bit thinner, and also to make sure it completely covers that center. You want to get it as close to the center as you can. And that way all of your pieces around the outside will fit on there perfectly too. Just use your fingers to kind of press it all into place. You can also use a tool to press everything together on the sides and in the corners, and then also to flatten it, make sure everything is smooth and ready for the next slice to go on there. Basically, the end product, you do want it to all be kind of seamless, so just gently rolling and pushing everything together. And for each of the sides, you'll just lay it directly in the middle and then kind of pinch down the sides and then make the end come to a point. And what's good about using the scraps from the piece that you are making the cane from is that the center will be the same colors. So if for some reason your circle shapes that you're putting on there did not completely 100% cover up all of the gaps and holes, it's really not going to be that noticeable because it's the same colors on the back side or inside core. So you won't have to be uber perfect about it. Now I've done all of the top part, and I will need to start working on the back. Again, I will be starting with the center, and for the back, I'm not going to be as meticulous or careful about it. I'm going to kind of roll it out, which will distort it just slightly. So I'm not 100% worried about the back. I do want it to look nice and kind of like the front, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Once you have the front and back done, you can bend your little starfish legs, arms, limbs into the shape that you want it. I will be using some E6000 after I've baked my piece to attach it to my hair clip. The thing about this E6000, you don't need a lot of pressure when trying to get the liquid out of the tube, and be sure to wipe it kind of clean, and also to put the cap back on immediately because this stuff just randomly starts pouring out. Maybe that's just my tube, I don't know. Once I have my starfish kind of on there and set, I will flip it over and let it dry, and that is it for that. Idea number 4, last but this is certainly not least, I love this pattern. So with the leftover cane, I'm just going to roll it into, or work it into, a square shape. Once I have it in the square shape, I will cut it into 4 even length pieces, just starting in the center and cutting it directly in half, and then making my marks on each side. I am eyeballing it at first, and then I will go back and make sure that it is pretty much the same for all 4 pieces. I am using a really small piece of cane, so your pattern will probably come out a little bit different, and you'll have a lot more. So working with the cane, you'll need a lot more. This was just kind of a last minute spur of a thing for me. I was like, you know what, I have this leftover cane and I'm going to try and play with it. I don't have a lot left, so if it didn't work out, it didn't work out, but it did in the end, so. Once I had those 4 sections, I stacked them together, rolled them out, and again, I will cut it into 4 even length pieces. And you can do this as many times as you would like, making your pattern as small as you would like. But I don't have a lot of cane left, so I couldn't do it that many times. And now to kind of further distort it a little bit, and to give it a little bit more funness, I'm going to cut it diagonally down the center. So you basically end up with 2 triangles for each of the pieces. And then you'll just flip them so that the outer part is in the inner part, and the inner part is in the outer part. But again, you will end up with a square. So you can further reduce your cane and make the pattern even more complex. But I don't have a lot left. This is a very, very small piece of cane. It's just for demonstration purposes only, so after this, I will just get it together one more time. And I needed to cut off a little bit more, but I have a small cane left here, so I'm not going to cut off a whole lot. I'm just going to roll it so that everything is joined together, it's smoothed out. And you'll want to cut that down into 4 even length pieces. Place those back together, and that is the last time that I will reduce, but I will make sure that all of the pieces are put together. And for this very small, itty bitty tiny piece, I'm going to cut it into 4ths. So first I will cut it directly in half. And then with each of those, I will cut them in half again. Then lay those out flat side by side. And I have burnished mine. And this is my pattern. And I'm going to make the exact same thing that I did in the previous one for the donut. It's a very thin piece, so this is actually very perfect for that. And I don't have a lot left over, which is good. But this time I put the little circle hole cut out at the top instead of the middle. These are some cords that I've had for a very long time. They're more like ropes. But I decided I was going to try to use this for this project. And I really like that purplish color at the top. The pink looked good too, though. You want to cut off a piece. It's going to need to be a pretty long piece for what we're going to do. Just make sure that it fits around your neck and how you want it to set. Once you have that length, you're going to make it 2 times that by folding it in half. Exactly. And since I'm going to wrap my piece in it also, I'm going to need a little extra space. So I'm going to account for that little extra space. I'm going to put my new neckline there. I'm going to fold it in half again. So that's 3 times. And then about halfway. So about 3.5 times plus that little bit extra for wrapping around my necklace. You'll want to cut that away. It's better to have a longer piece than a shorter piece because you can always cut some away if it's not big enough. And I did look up online how to make a adjustable knot necklace, and I'll leave a link for that video that I found that I thought was really good below for you, so you can learn how to make it through that too. But I'll also show you here very briefly. I looked at a couple different videos and I felt like that person's video was the best explained. And you can actually do it several different ways. So I just liked their idea and their way the best because I thought it was easiest. So I'll kind of run through that with you. Now that I have my piece wrapped, and I did that directly down the center of my string, so they have 2 even length pieces on each side. I have it laid out with the necklace facing up. I have my left and my right side. So what you'll want to do is do left over right. So it kind of makes an X. You'll want to take that left piece. It needs to come under the right piece. Then finish bringing it over and making a loop under that left. So you'll bring left under left. And then that top hole, you'll want to take your string and pull it through front to back and then pull. Don't make it super tight, but you do want to pull it so it is tighter. And now you have an adjustable on one side. The second side is slightly different. You're going to take the left side again. It's going to go over the right. Take the right side, fold it and bend it backwards. You're going to bring it up and under the big loop. And now that you have an 8 loop, you'll take that end and pull it through the smaller side and pull it till it's tight, and now you have 2 adjustable sides. Easy peasy. And I did decide to put a little bead on the end of mine. You could just wrap it and tie it in a knot and then cut off the extra, but I kind of liked the idea of putting a bead on there. So if you have a bead that is large enough that will fit the string through it, you should try it too. And I put one on one side. and I will briefly show you how to put it on this other side. You'll just need to string your bead, and you'll want to get it pretty close to the bottom. You'll just leave a little bit of room so that you can make your 2 knots. Once you have your 2 knots, you do want it to be pretty tight so it does not come loose. I'm going to use some pliers. I'm going to hold it on one side, and then I'm going to pull it with the other. This gives me a better grip than just my hands. And then you'll have a little piece hanging off the end. You'll just cut that away. And that's all you have to do. I really, really like this pattern, and I think I like the donut in this one the best, and then the starfish. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!